and welcome back to my channel for this video, which is going to be the part 2 to my downstairs hallway makeover. If you're watching this video, I'm going to assume that you've already seen the part 1 of this makeover, and in that video we transformed my entryway space from this to this. And in this video we're going to be focusing on the final projects and finishing touches, which will hopefully fill this space with personality and make it feel like a big hug from myself every time I walk through my front door. Let us start by first reminding ourselves of the drawings that I did at the start of that last video to show off the plans that I had for this space. Here they are, and hopefully you can see from the progress that we've made so far that it is looking very much like these drawings. We've got the blue painted ceiling, the green trim, the colourful flowers and the red door. The one major difference between the space and these drawings is of course that panelled wall, which I ended up stripping back to the exposed wood rather than repainting it, and I'm really glad that I ended up doing that. So that decision did end up having a little bit of a knock-on effect on my other plans for this space, so I've whipped up another quick illustration to show off my current thoughts. I decided that the rug I'd originally chosen, while nice, was going to end up looking a bit too brown on brown on brown. That one was from Dunelm, and luckily I hadn't already ordered it, so it was an easy decision to switch it out for another option. What wasn't so easy though was finding another rug that I liked, and after way too long trawling the internet, I ended up finding this guy secondhand on eBay, which I'm hoping is going to work really well and will actually tie together some of the colours that I've got going on in this space. I haven't actually unravelled this since it arrived, so maybe let's do that now. Why not? Ugh! Brute strength. It's an IKEA rug originally, apparently. I think it's going to look really good, and I'm actually really glad that I managed to find one second hand rather than buying new. I wanted to find something that was going to be really hard wearing and that I wasn't going to feel too precious about, because I'm going to be walking over this with wet muddy shoes and wiping those shoes on it. So this is a great option for that, and an excellent start. Similarly to the rug, I decided that the long wooden coat hook that I was going to buy and mount onto that panelled wall was going to be a bit too wood overkill in this space. So instead I bought 2 of these little green coat hooks that I got from B&Q, and I'm going to hang these on the wall next to the stairs instead, which frees up a little bit of space on the panelled wall. So I'm thinking I might get a big piece of mirror cut that I can inset inside one of those panels to help bounce around the light and the colour in this space, though I'm saying this before having price checked how much that's going to cost. So if you don't see that come to fruition in this video, it's because I decided it was too expensive. I've rethought that big flower light switch cover thing slightly, added a couple more flower heads on there. I've put in a little clay butterfly DIY that I want to make, and I have purchased a doorstop which is going to go on the skirting board behind my front door, which leads us nicely into the first project of this video. I mentioned in the first part of this makeover that I keep accidentally slamming the doorknob into the wall down here and creating this annoying little dent, which I then had to patch over and repaint. And I did notice a couple of comments on that video suggesting that I needed a doorstop down here, and that was good advice. What you didn't know was that I had actually intended to do just that, and I had purchased a doorstop ahead of time so that I could get it done. But none of that made the cut, because the doorstop I had purchased, this one to be exact, is obviously way too small to actually stop the door. I also have an admission to make. The day after I filmed that outro to that video, having made a mental note to be gentle with this door until I'd found an appropriate doorstop solution, I was coming home after doing a big food shop and I was a bit overwhelmed and flustered, and I did indeed push the door open way too hard and slammed it into this wall again. So there is now now the beginnings of another lovely dent. Am I going to patch over that again in this video? No, I'm not. But I am going to prevent it from getting any worse with this much more lengthy and much more phallic doorstop that I'm hoping is actually going to be long enough to stop the door this time. Much better. Now, I could just install this as is. It's a perfectly fine doorstop that nobody will notice or care about. But me being me, I would really prefer to jazz it up a little bit first. And I also wanted a nice little project to ease me into this video. So I did some drawings and played around with some options. Option 1, a flower and grass scene. For this I was thinking I would do the same thing that I did on the little pipe in my bedroom, which was to make petals out of like faux leather fabric and then slot that onto the metal part here, then add those grassy details to the woodwork and the skirting board with just paint. And I do think that this looks quite nice, but something about it wasn't feeling right to me. So I moved on to option 2, which is a little twig that I thought could look quite sweet, and I imagined I'd do this out of paper mache, but then I was thinking, would it look a little bit too Disneyland fake? So I scrapped that and considered option 3. I thought that this would make a nice little perch for a tiny little blackbird that I could make out of wire and paper mache, but I ended up ruling this out because the chances of knocking into it and messing it up are pretty high, and also it doesn't make sense to me to have a bird sitting so low to the ground. So option 4, which was arguably the most off-the-wall one of all of them, this was just me wanting to draw this really, and it's a tiny little version of me going for a swim. Again, this would be wire and paper mache with a vinyl decal I was thinking on the floor for the water. This would have been the most fun option to make, but again it is entirely impractical and also just low-key kind of stupid. So then finally option 5, which is admittedly no less stupid than the last one, but is nonetheless the option that we're going for, and that is to make this into a tiny little knitted glove. I've wanted to try a yarn bombing inspired project for a while now, and as a novice knitter, something dinky and small seems like the perfect achievable starting point for that. Also, this being a high traffic area on an object that's literally designed to be bumped into, it really makes sense to go for a softer medium, and I like the idea of having this as a little hand holding the door back. So with that all said, let's get going on it. I've moved to my bed for optimum knitting comfort, and I'm going to start out by knitting just a little rectangle that's going to go around the main shaft of this doorstop, and the wall colours I have selected I've kind of pulled from the colours in the rug to tie it all in nicely together. And we're going to start off with a yellow stripe at the base, which I'm thinking will transition nicely from this gold disc which will be visible. So I'm going to start off by casting on 16 stitches onto my knitting needles. We're using 4mm needles for this, which are the smallest ones that I have, so they will have to do. I did do a little bit of playing around yesterday to make sure that I remembered how you even do it. I'm guessing no one here is looking for me to give them knitting tips, because I don't really know how to knit very well, so I'm just going to do this to the best of my knowledge whilst existing in my own head rather than talking through too much what I'm doing, because trust me, you don't want to learn this stuff from me. Okay, we've got 6 rows of our yellow, and I've just been following the basic knit purl pattern. I did make a couple of minor mistakes, but nothing that's going to be too major of an issue. And now I'm going to switch over to this nice olivey green and do another 6 rows. Olive rows done, and now we are transitioning to this slightly more foresty green. So far this has taken me embarrassingly long. When I see videos of people knitting, like they're not even looking at their needles and they're just going so fast, I think, how the hell are you doing that? It takes so much time and concentration for me to do it, and this is literally like the tiniest thing. I guess this is how we learn. I was originally quite wedded to the idea of this being some sort of natural-ish thing, because that's the general idea of what I'm going for in this hallway. It's like a indoor-outdoor space, but I do also like the idea of this having a glove on it, because we're getting into winter now now, and if you're going to leave the house, you probably do want to be wrapped up warm. So I'm going to say that it works. I also don't necessarily love things in design being too wedded to a theme. I think if you can't be somewhat flexible and loose when you're playing around with ideas, you're going to end up making things that aren't the best version of what that thing could be, which is why I often do lots of drawings on Illustrator ahead of time, sketching out different ideas until I get the one that feels the most right to me. And of all the ones I came up with, this was the one that was making me feel the most excited. Now I'm doing 6 rows of this nice burgundy red. This is very much prompting me to do more knitting. And actually these colours would look really good in an actual human-sized jumper or scarf or something. So maybe one day I can twin with my doorstop. Wouldn't that be cute? Okay, that's done. And now I'm going to make up the rest of the body with a few lines of this pink. And after far too much time has passed, here is the tiniest piece of knitting you've ever seen, which is a very good size to slot around my doorstop like so. Here it is. And now what I need to do is sew these 2 edges together so that it's nice and finished. And then I need to make the actual hand portion of this. I'm not actually going to knit it like a proper glove because I've never knitted a regular size glove, let alone a miniature one. I think that that would drive me insane. So I'm going to do it by knitting little strips of the wool and then sewing it into the general shape of a hand for reference. But I'll start by sewing this together with a tapestry needle and then see where we're at. Here it is. And somehow with this knitted thing on it, it looks even more phallic, but not for long. Luckily, I do have this other scrappy bit of knitting that I did yesterday when I was just reminding myself how to knit. And I'm thinking that this could probably make up the palm portion of the glove if it is carefully folded. So let's see if that will work. Maybe if I kind of curl it in on itself. My hand is kind of that shape. Is that something like the shape of the palm of a hand? I think that could work. If, of course, I add some fingers, which I think I'll do by knitting 5 little individual rectangles and then roll them up and pin them on. This is so damn fiddly. I made a little thumb that's just pinned on there at the moment. This thing is covered in pins. This, I think, is going to be the pinky. I'll go somewhere here. I don't know, does that look okay? It's all going to come together in the sewing up portion. That's what I'm telling myself. All of the fingers have been knitted, and I was saying that other thing was the tiniest bit of knitting, but look at these tiny little guys, so very small. When they curl around on themselves, they definitely make serviceable fingers, and I'm just gonna sew them together now, sew them onto this palm, and then we'll be done. Here is our finished tiny little gloved hand, and it's not the neatest thing. If you look closely, there's lots of wayward stitches going on, but it definitely does the trick. It looks like a hand, and it's nice and squishy, so it will really cushion the blow of that door when I inevitably slam it open next. And now I just need to sew this onto the arm. And we are done. Here is my finished gloved doorstop, and I'm actually really pleased with this. I think it's come out pretty fun. It's obviously very silly and unnecessary, but most of the projects I do on this channel are not about practicality. They are about pleasing myself, and this certainly does please me, especially because, like human gloves, this is fully removable. So if I ever want to have a regular boring doorstop again, I can, but glove on is much more pleasing. And now this is finished and it's ready to install. But I'm going to do that later on in this video, and for now we're going to move on to the next project, which will be happening in a few days' time. So I'll see you soon. The time has come for me to fill in those 3 empty gaps in my flower ceiling border. And funny story about this, when I first viewed this flat 5 years ago with my mum, we were talking about those missing flowers, and she actually suggested that I make some replacements out of paper mache, which at the time, having not paper mached since childhood, I completely poo-pooed that idea, and honestly I thought that it was really stupid. Fast forward to now, I'm obviously obviously obsessed with paper mache, and I'm going to be doing exactly as she suggested. So the moral of that story is that I should probably listen to my mum more, and I should generally be more open to other people's input and wisdom. So we're going to be keeping that in mind moving forwards. I did have a bit of a head start on this project yesterday when I quickly measured one of those existing flowers and used some cardboard to cut out the shapes that I needed for each of these missing spots, just so that I would have a base to work around for my paper mache. Here is one of those. Now, what I would usually do to build up a shape like this is use layers of sheets of glue roll mixed with water and PVA glue, and that works pretty well for most of my projects, but for this project in particular, I do want to try something a little bit different. Obviously, ceiling roses and decorative trims like these are typically made out of moulded plaster, not paper, but I don't really want to do that, and I also have no clue how I'd go about making a mould. Then I was thinking that people have been telling me for ages now that I need to try out a pulping method with my paper mache, which I do know that some people mix plaster into, which is kind of the best of both worlds, and I'm hoping that will give a smoother and maybe stronger finish. Not sure. I've never done this before, and in general I'm not that good or confident at trying new things, so I am feeling a little bit anxious about how this is going to turn out. But I guess harking back to that lesson that I learnt, that I mentioned just moments ago in this video, I should generally be more open to other people's input and wisdom. I am proceeding with this project with a little bit more confidence due to the help of today's video sponsor, Skillshare. So after I decided on how I wanted to try and make this project, I headed on over to Skillshare and typed in paper mache into the search bar, which led me to this set of classes by Lily Mart. Over 7 lessons, Lily shows the complete process of how to make these unique paper mache vases using pulped paper and plaster, which was very convenient for me. Of course, for this project, I focused mainly on the lesson on how to make the paper mache mix, and I followed Lily's guidance to soak and strain the toilet rolls, add the glue and the plaster, and now I have a big bowl of gunk that I can work with. I also really want to follow this class in full in the future and have a go at making one of these vases, because I think Lily's turned out really cute, and I reckon that there's lots of different directions that you could go with this. The great thing about Skillshare is that it features loads of easy to digest classes that you can follow along with to the letter or tailor to meet the needs of your own specific projects. Classes are taught by world-class creatives in fields from graphic design to textiles to entrepreneurship, so you'll always find something to keep your hands and your brain occupied. Since we're coming up to the holiday season, you might want to join Skillshare and follow along with some of these classes to make your own unique handmade Christmas gifts. Actually, a paper mache vase would be a really nice option for that, or you can even give the gift of learning to your loved ones with a Skillshare gift card. The first 500 people to use my link in the description or scan the QR code will receive a free 1-month trial of Skillshare. Plus, you can gift Skillshare memberships to your friends and family. Get started today, and thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to the paper mache. So now I have my 3 little flower bases here, and I have my paper clay plaster mix, which smells a bit like yogurt, and I'm not sure why, but I'm quite happy with how this came out. It looks like it was supposed to in the video, and it is very moldable. So now the plan is just to smush it over these bases and try and warp it into the correct shape, which I'm thinking is going to be pretty fun. I'm wearing gloves for this, which isn't something that I normally do for paper mache. However, it told me to in the video, so we're following the rules today and we're doing things by the book. I guess the benefit of this over my sheet paper layering method is that you can get a lot of mass in one little go, which is handy for something like this, which needs to be relatively chunky, and hopefully it's gonna work. It's definitely nice to have another string to my bow as far as paper mache methods go, and now I've bought that tub of plaster, I'm also thinking about what plaster projects I can do in the future. Something's happening. I'm gonna run this downstairs stairs quickly just to make sure that I'm getting the depth right, because I can't actually remember how chunky these bottom leaves are supposed to be. So I'll be right back. Okay, yeah, that seems about right. Also, if you can hear that noise, my neighbours are getting their drains fixed and it's very, very loud intermittently. So I'm going to labour on with this with a YouTube video on and report back when I've got all of these bottom leaves filled in. Okay, base of this first one done, and I've realised I need to get a move on a little bit because this stuff is drying relatively quickly. I guess it is the plaster in it, but I think it looks decent enough. I can clean it up afterwards with my engraving thing. And now I will add the flower on top. So let's get more of this. Don't dry on me. You can kind of wet it back up by squeezing it around a little bit, but yeah, need to move quickly. Flower petals on, quickly, quickly, quickly. I do like how moldable it is actually, and I've been finding that if you shove it on a little bit rough, you can use a little brush with a little bit of glue on there to kind of smooth out the surface. Just need to not let myself get hung up on the details, get the shape in and clean it up later. I know these aren't going to be identical to the existing ones, but I do want them to be not easily recognizable as a shitty craft project. So far so good. Now we just need the little ball in the center, which I've lost my cardboard thing for. Add a bit more glue. Let's push it on there. Okay, that is the first one done, and I think it looks quite good. Just 2 more to do, and I'm on a bit of a time crunch so that this clay doesn't dry. So I'm going to turn my camera off and lock in, and I'll show you when we've got 3 of these fully molded. Well, that was a little bit stressful. I did realise that I could add a little bit more glue and water to my clay mix to make it a little bit wetter, but it did change the consistency of it somewhat. So the second 2 that I did are slightly lumpier in appearance than the first. First one's right here. I think it actually looks really quite good. Second 2 still very much drying, like I said, a little bit on the lumpy side, but I'm feeling confident enough that that won't be an issue by the time that they're dry and sanded and engraved and painted and on the ceiling. They're going to be on the ceiling. I don't need to worry too much. Overall, I'm glad that they're done, and I have quite a lot of the clay left over. I clearly made way too much. All in all, I can say that I did enjoy this new process. It was really fun to be able to sculpt a bit more with the paper mache than what I normally can do. The clay is very pliable and fun to squeeze. I just think if I was to do this again in the future, I would make smaller batches rather than having a large amount that was drying a bit too quickly. Now I just need to leave these to dry for a few days, and then we'll be back to do a little bit of sanding and finishing up. Here are our 3 dry ceiling flowers. I have taken one of these downstairs to compare it to the existing ones, and I can say that there are some notable differences, mainly that mine are ever so slightly bigger and shallower than the main ones. Also, I kind of messed up on the shape of the little flower petals, which on the ones downstairs do curl out a lot more than on mine, but there is absolutely no way in hell that I'm remaking these. And I'm thinking, because there's 3 of my ones that look the same and then the rest of those ones look the same, how will you know which are the originals and which are the dodgy knockoffs? Next up, what we're going to do is give these a good sand, and also I'm going to get my little engraving pen out, and we're going to go around some of these details to just make the shapes a little bit more defined, add some little folded details onto the petals, and then we're going to say that they're ready to paint. Okay, that took quite a while to do all 3 of these, but the sanding and especially the engraving has actually made a huge difference in making these look a lot better. And now I can get to painting them, which is going to be lovely and easy because we're just using the same 3 colours that I used on the ones downstairs, and I'm just going to slap it on there. I find that emulsion paint's actually really good for painting paper mache. It goes on really nicely and has pretty good even coverage. And they are done. Normally with my paper mache projects, I would finish them off with a sealing coat of Mod Podge, but that would give them a kind of glossy surface finish that would not fit in with the rest of the ceiling. So all I can do now is leave these to dry and then come back in a couple of days time for the fun and potentially stressful task of attempting to stick them onto my ceiling. I am quite anxious about this. I bought this here glue because it's the one that the man in the shop told me that I needed, and from what it says on the tube, I just need to put it on the back of these and then hold them up there for a few minutes, and then in theory they should not fall down. These, obviously being paper mache and a bit of plaster, don't weigh very much, and this says it holds 170 kilograms per meter squared, which sounds like a lot more than what these weigh. Obviously though, sticking onto the ceiling, gravity will be working against me, and I've never stuck anything to my ceiling before, which is probably where a lot of this anxiety is coming from. But I'm not going to know if it's going to work until I at least try. So I'm going to cut this tube open, put some glue on the back of one of these, and try and whack it up on the ceiling. I'm going for the more is more method. Overkill? Dunno. Let's try this. Eek.
I don't know at what point I can let go. This is actually super painful on the arms.
It's a few minutes later
And I'm now
relatively confident that it's not about to fall down.
so that may be
Famous last words? I don't know. Okay, update. I got over ambitious and I wanted to caulk on around the edges of this first one quickly just so I could pin them down a little bit more. And I actually ended up knocking it off the ceiling, which is very upsetting. So we're going to try again, and I'm going to hold it for longer. And to assist me in that, because I can't crane my arms up at the ceiling that long, I've made this kind of bootleg tool, which is just a poster tube with a bit of cork taped to the top of it, which I'm thinking I can use to hold it in place. I'm putting even more glue on this time. In the trade, we call it a shitload. Take two. This thing definitely helps with the arm pain. I don't know how effective it's being at actually sticking it, but I'm not going to move it yet.
patience is the key here.
I think my contraption worked. All three of my flowers are adhered to the ceiling and are currently not showing any signs of falling down. Though I am going to touch wood because I really don't want to jinx it. I'm not going to be dim this time, and I'm going to wait before I caulk around the edges. I'm going to do that off camera, and I'll also touch up the paint a little bit. So you won't be seeing another update on this project unless they do in fact fall down off the ceiling, in which case we will cut to a shot of me explaining what I'm going to do next. So for my sake, let's all hope that you're about to watch the next project in this video. Today I'm here next to my light switch because I want to talk about the big flower installation thing that I want to make for this space. And the main reason that I want to make this is to cover up this ugly plastic cable casing that runs up the wall above the switch and is honestly just a bit of an eyesore. I played around with a few different ideas of what I could do on this, and I ended up settling on a giant bluebell, as you would have seen in my drawings. I thought that this would tie in nicely with the blue and the green colour on the ceiling, and also make sense with the general outdoorsy theme that I'm going for down here. I also think the bluebells are some of the prettiest flowers, so I'm quite excited by the prospect of trying to make one. I'd originally planned for this project to be made out of paper mache because, as we all know, that is a favourite medium of mine, but since we've already done one paper mache project in this video, I thought maybe we should mix it up a little bit. So I've decided to make this giant flower a sewing based project instead. And for this, we're going to be using some of this lovely velvet fabric. Obviously though, velvet is soft, and for this to work, I need to find a way to make it strong and structured so I can get that nice curved shape on the stem and have it be sturdy enough to support the weight of the flower heads and not just collapse in on itself. So to achieve this, I need to start by constructing some sort of frame that will be able to be screwed into the wall either side of the casing here, and which I can then cover in some of this nice fabric. And for this, I will be using some cardboard and some chicken wire, and the method of construction will be made up as we go. So I've covered the whole thing in tape, and now it is at least a little bit stronger. Before I start on the wire, I'm just gonna take this back downstairs quickly to test out and make sure that it is in fact the right size to cover up this cable casing. That's fine. Whether or not this this will stay on the inside when I actually install it, I'm not sure, but it at least means that I can easily do this from upstairs, knowing that the sizing is at least correct. So I'm basically just gonna squish this into the right kind of shape and also add a couple of leaves. And it won't look like much at this point, but it is all part of the journey. I need this to be longer than our cardboard piece because the top is gonna curve around over the ceiling. I think that kind of length is about right. Chicken wire is a very useful material, but I don't like working with it particularly because it's scratchy. It has that really dry kind of feel to it that makes shivers go down my spine a little bit, but I do think it is the best option for this particular job, so let's get it over and done with. Ugh! Okay, that's cut. Now I'm going to squish it around a little bit. This is what I've done, and it's just a big load of bent chicken wire. It was always going to look a little bit crappy at this point, but maybe I wasn't expecting it to look so much so. It still needs quite a bit of finagling to get the shape right, and I'm going to spend some time moving all of these little wires so that we have more of a solid matted shape, which will be easier to lay fabric on top of. But I think ultimately this is about what I could expect. I just need to keep bending it about till it's a little bit less of a tangled mess, and then we can take it downstairs and see if it's going to work or not. This goes... Oh. Oh, it's sticking to me. Oh, have you got me? Now for the leaves, I think I want to do 2 leaves, one either side of the stem. Quite a big one on the right, starting from relatively low down, and then a smaller one on the left hand side, just to add a little bit of asymmetry to it. I've also decided that I won't be needing this cardboardy thing in the finished piece, so we can thank it for serving its purposes of measuring, and now just focus on the wire. We're trialing and we are erroring. That's pretty leafy. I think that looks semi-decent for a kind of tatty chicken wire frame. Now we've got the frame of the stem made, I have popped it to one side and we're going to shift focus onto the flower heads themselves, which I'm going to be making slightly differently. I'm not using chicken wire for these, so let me show you what we're doing. I have some of this white felt fabric, which I've already pre-cut a piece of into the shape of a petal. Obviously bluebells have a lovely curved shape to them. They're rounded at the top with petals that upturn at their tips, and I want my petals to mimic this shape and be bendable. So to do this, I'm going to be using some of this thin little wire and running it down the spines, I don't think that's the right word, of each of the petals and securing that in place with a few rough stitches. I've left a little loop in the wire at the top of my petal here, which I'm thinking will come in handy when it comes to connecting my flower heads to my stem frame. Still don't exactly know how, but trying to plan ahead in a kind of hypothetical way. You can see that it's now holding that nice blue belly shape while being a little bit more delicate than perhaps it would have been if I'd used the chicken wire. Not entirely sure that it's going to make a huge difference, but this is what we're doing. And now that this is done, I can trace around my petal shape, cut out 2 pieces which need to be slightly bigger than my felt piece for seam allowance, and I can pin these together on either side of the felt. Then I will roll over the seams and stitch those together. Okay, and now I'm going to do a straight stitch border around this whole thing about 1 centimetre or 2 from the edge. And now it looks like this, and as you can see it's all relatively roughly done, but I'm not worried about that because all of this messy stitching will be covered up once we put the flower head all together. So now we have 1 petal done and I just need 4 more, which I conveniently have right here. I made these yesterday whilst sitting on a blow-up mattress in my living room and watching The Real Housewives of Orange County, which was total trash and very, very enjoyable. I did actually just look it up, and apparently bluebells are supposed to have 6 petals, not 5. But 6 I think would have made the head a bit too big for what I want, and also it would have taken me longer to make. I also do know that bluebells are supposed to be more of a deeper purpley toned blue blue than this, but I was limited by what was available in my local fabric shop. And anyway, bluebells are obviously also not this large, nor are they made of velvet. So we're taking some creative license here. Please let's all just agree to forgive my scientific inaccuracies. And now that we have all 5 of these ready, I can start stitching them together. And I'm going to use these little straight stitch borders that I added as a guide for this. This bit's quite exciting because I can finally start to see the full shape of the flower head coming together, and it shouldn't take too long until it looks like this. Let's shape this round a little bit. Here we are. Now it's looking okay, but it is still a little bit floppy and obviously messy around these seams here. You can see especially when the tips of the petals are curled upwards. You also get a lot of bunching on that top layer of fabric. So now I just want to clean it up a bit by going over all of the edges with a satin type of stitch to finish it off. And as I do that, I'm going to try and pull this top layer a little bit more taut. I'm quadrupling up my thread for this for efficiency's sake, but even with that, doing this is going to take me quite a lot of time. So to save on pointless repetition, let's just skip ahead until it's finished. And here we are, one velvet bluebell head. I'm sure you can tell that it's the next day because it took me about 3 hours to finish off all of the seams on this last night. I think it looks particularly good from the underside, which is fortunate because this is obviously going to be hanging up quite high in the hallway. So this is the view that you will be seeing of it a lot of the time. On the side, I can admit it does look a little bit like a blue banana peel, but I'm hoping it will read a lot more blue belly once it is attached to the stem with some leaves and a couple of other flower heads to go along with it. Speaking of which, here are some that I made earlier. I've been really wanting to have a Blue Peter moment like that in one of these videos for a while now, but usually I'm making and filming as I go, so I haven't really done that before. And now we have these 3 bluebell heads that are all slightly different sizes, and it is quite satisfying because you can, if you want, stack them all inside of each other like Russian dolls. They also make good hats. I made these 2 off camera over the last week because, to be honest, I've been feeling quite low and stressed out. I've been PMSing very hard. As I'm getting older, I'm finding it increasingly hard to act happy when that's not how I'm feeling, and there was a couple of days when I was avoiding doing anything for this video because I was thinking I need to film it if I make something, and the thought of having my miserable face being filmed was just too daunting of an ask. But then I remembered that I can always make something off camera and then show it to you after the fact, which was a little bit of a revelation to me. It's been quite weird to be sharing my art practice online like this because making has always been a very personal and meditative thing for me. It's something that I do when I want to shut off from the world, be still and process things, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm still able to do that whilst making for these videos. So it was really nice to be able to put these together without the pressure of chatting along at the same time, worrying about how I was looking or being perceived. I was just sitting and sewing and generally being grubby. And now that we've got these 3 flower heads made, we can move our attention back to working on the stem and the leaves. So let me just try this biggest bluebell head on for size on the curved bit of our stem. Get in there. I think the ratio of stem to bluebell is about right, and then I think these 2 will hang off of this bit like that. But we need to cover up all of this trashy chicken wire, and I think if I put the velvet directly on top of this, it's gonna be way too lumpy. So I'm gonna use some of this wool blanket that I used part of for my footstool project, and I still have a load of it left. It's just pale creamy wool with a lot of stains on it, so it's good as an undersized option that will smooth out this surface ready for the velvet. I do need to make sure that I am pulling out some little bits of this wire in various intervals to make sure that I've got places to put screws through for when I hang this on the wall. I can start with this hooky bit because this is going to be freely suspended, so it does not need any screws. Oh wait, no, I do need some of this wire exposed so that I know where these are being attached to. What point do I do first? I realised I actually should attach these bluebell heads before I start adding this padding around it. Otherwise I'm going to lose access to this metal to loop it onto. So I've got more of my skinny little wire and I'm going to thread it through all of the loops that I made on these bluebells and just kind of tangle it in with this mess of wire here. The other issue I have with talking through my projects as I go is that because I often don't really know what it is I'm doing before I start doing it, I end up starting a sentence about 20 times being like, so this is what I'm gonna do, and then I start doing it and realise that it doesn't work, and then I have to start again and be like, so this is what I'm gonna do, or I have to keep admitting that I'm changing my mind, which I don't have a problem with doing because I'm never here to pretend like I'm a perfect, well organised maker, but I just think it gets a bit confusing for the video if I'm constantly chopping and changing what I'm saying I'm up to. I'll show you the 3 of them once they are all attached to my metal crook here. That took ages. They're obviously quite heavy, but I'm hoping that that will be fine because it will obviously be screwed into the wall. I wrapped a little loops of wire around it here just as a note to self that this will be the first place where they will be screwed into the wall. So if I hold it from here, this is how it kind of hangs. And yeah, I think it's okay. A little bit anxious about it. Maybe we should quickly take it downstairs just so we can double check the placement of all of these before I start wrapping the fabric around the top part of this. My confidence is being tested. I wouldn't be so worried if this was for like a Halloween costume or something, not a permanent fixture in my home.
This will be screwed in at multiple points all the way up. Can you even fucking see it? No, you can't. It's not hanging great.
I think it's workable, and once the fabric's on it, it will be a little bit easier to manipulate and hold its shape because the stem will be more sturdy and strong. At the minute it's just so floopy that it's hard to tell if it's gonna work. It should be fine. Let's just start stitching some of this wool, shall we? It is nice to be covering up some of this wire. It's easier to bend it and touch it once it's covered in something softer, and you can kind of squish and manipulate the shape of it a little bit. It's easier to handle. I'll get this whole top of the curve covered in my wool and then show you again. Okay, we've got the felt on there up to our first anchor point. It does still droop down a bit at the end just because of the weight of it. But I think that that still looks quite nice. It's kind of bluebell droplet-y. And now I need to carry on and cover the rest of this. I'm going to go and test it out downstairs again without the camera, just so I can figure out at how many points I need to be adding more spots to screw through. I'm thinking at least 3 or 4, one at the very bottom and then maybe 2 more sets in the middle, just so I know that it's not going to fall off the wall. So I've been going about 45 minutes and I've done this top section of the bit that's actually going to go around the casing. I think it looks okay. I just went and tested it to make sure that it fits, and it seems to. You can see how I've been doing it, just wrapping it around and doing lots of stitches and then like squeezing it into shape. Gotten up to my second point where I'm going to put the screw holes now, and I think I need to attach the smaller leaf before I do any more. That's going about here, so I'm just gonna wrap all of these loose wiry ends around at this point. I balance that on my head. I need a second set of hands really, because I don't think I anticipated this project being quite as fiddly as what it is. I also keep scratching myself and I've bled a couple of times. Just want to get all of this wire out of poking range. You can go in here. Okay, we're getting somewhere. That leaf's pretty securely on there now, so I can carry on with more of the wool. Even though I am complaining a little bit, I have to say this is quite fun. The guesswork that goes into this type of project is always pretty satisfying. The fear that it's going to turn out rubbish and the hope that it's going to turn out good. It's all part of it. that's done. And this looks a lot neater than this first one that I did, but again, it doesn't matter. It's only an underside. Got 2 more little tabs set up here for screws. So I'm just going to fill in this last bit with some more of our felty fabric, and then we should have one continuous thing that's going to go over that cable casing. I also managed to find a way to hook this up as I sew, so those flower heads are out of the way. They've been pissing me off a little bit. Looks like it would make a good marble run, doesn't it? I moved on to the sofa because this guy is just really huge and unwieldy, and it was just easier to be able to prop it up. I've mostly finished covering this stem in the wool now. Still got a few odd little joins to sew together. I also got this bigger bottom leaf attached, so now we've got both of them on there. I've only got a couple more hours of sunlight today, and then I'm working for the next few days. So I'm going to sign off for today and just work on these leaves, finish off all of this felty layer, and I'll be back in a few days time and we can clean it all up with the green velvet and add some finishing touches, try and make it look a little bit less crap. Here is our giant bluebell now covered fully in our blankety material, and it's pissing me off a lot less now because I'm not being stabbed by it anymore. I think the leaves are looking pretty nice. The bluebell heads themselves are hanging a lot better and I think look a lot better. Now they're properly attached at the tops, and you can see we've got our 4 sets of fixings all the way down the stem for putting it on the wall. And now all that's left is to cover this whole thing in our green velvet, and you will see that momentarily. And here it is, my finished massive bluebell. You can see all of our green velvets on there now. Leaves are covered, stem is covered. We've got some nice little leaves connecting our bluebell heads to the stem. It's still annoyingly large and floppy, but I think I'm happy with it. I did go and hold it up downstairs the other day, and I think it looks quite good. It's a bit hard to tell because you still have to hold it up with 2 arms so it doesn't flop over, and when you do that you can't step back and look at it. So I guess I won't really know how successful this project has been until it's been installed, and I'm not going to do that straight away because I want to do all the installation-y bits at the end of this video. So for now we're going to put this guy to one side and move on to the next project on our list. And the next project in question is going to be made out of air dry clay. And full disclosure, this project is something that I'm copying from something that I saw on eBay. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned in a previous video that I often will use eBay like other people use Pinterest because I love scrolling through the art and the bric-a-brac on there, but I don't always like parting with my money to buy the things. Quite often I'll see something and think, ooh, I could probably make that for cheaper. And this thing that I'm trying to dupe is something that came up about a month ago when I was scrolling looking at different wall plaques, and this beautiful thing came up. It's just a little ceramic butterfly that you hang on the wall, and I saw it and I thought it was really nice and it would look really good in my downstairs hallway, but it's not something that I can really justify spending 30 English pounds on, so I'm going to try and recreate it here today. And I'm thinking that this is going to be pretty easy to make. Obviously it needs to hang on the wall and I want it to have some structure, so I'm going to be starting off with a little bit of my galvanized wire, bend that into the general shape of a butterfly, and also include a little hoop at the back from which I can hang it on the wall. Okay, I think this should work. Basic butterfly shape and a hook at the back. And now I'm going to go over these wings with a little bit of masking tape just so there's a bit more structure on the base there. And then I'm going to cover the whole thing in air dry clay, which should be a fun and messy thing to do. I haven't done a clay project in a little while, so I'm quite looking forward to it. Okay, well, here it is. It's done. It's definitely not perfect. It's not as good as the one on eBay, but I think it will do. I had some issues getting the clay thin enough around the wings to make them look delicate without them just crumbling in on themselves. So we've gone for kind of a happy middle ground. I also didn't spend too much time making the back not look like a mess because obviously that's not going to be visible anyway. And now I'm going to leave this to dry for a few days time and then I will be back to paint it. Our butterfly is dry and and I think it looks pretty decent. The back is actually not nearly as rough as I thought it was going to be. It feels pretty sturdy. As long as it doesn't fall down off the wall, I don't think it's going to break. And now I can just go ahead with painting it. I didn't want to copy the exact paint job of the one on the eBay listing. That seemed a bit too much. So I had a look on Google for some butterfly patterns that I liked, and I have selected this one. And before you say it, I'm very much aware that the shape of this butterfly is really quite different than the shape of this butterfly. But this is a fictional reimagining of a butterfly, and it doesn't really matter that it's not going to be perfect. I'm just going to do my best to copy this general vibe onto here as much as I can. And I'm going to be using acrylic paints for this, starting out with, I think, just a base coat of this nice rusty orangey colour on the front, and might as well do the back as well. Now I'm going to block in some of the creamy light coloured details, and now I'm going to add the darker bits, and we'll see if we can pull this all together. I'm not sure that this is looking very good, if I'm totally honest. I'm also slightly worried about my ability to match up what I've done on this side on that side, but I'm going to attempt it. And here it is. I think it's come out pretty good actually. I ended up painting the back black just so we'd get a seamless flow front to back. And now all that's left to do is a sealing coat with some Mod Podge, then I will leave it to dry and it will be ready to hang. Time for the quick final project of this video, and you are getting voiceover Emily today because on the day that I filmed this I was feeling pretty ill and my voice was cracking really badly. So I threw a jumper on over the top of my pyjamas and I got to work on this canvas, which I had bought from the charity shop for £4. If we look at my drawing for this project, the plan for this piece was very simple and minimal. It doesn't have any deep meaning or specific thought behind it. I was just trying to tie together some of the colours that we've got going on in this space and make it all work with the other art pieces that I've collected for the wall downstairs, which you will see later. I don't think all wall art needs to have a specific meaning or even be very good. Sometimes something just looks decent in a space and is destined to be painted over with something better at a future date. I would say though, if you do just want simple abstract pieces in your home, you might as well paint them yourself rather than buying shitty canvas prints from HomeSense, because it's very easy to do and also gives you the freedom to pick out your own colours and designs to match your interior style. After painting the base a lovely muddy brown colour and painting the sides of the canvas in a nice shade of pink, I taped off the cross shape that I wanted and went over the top of the canvas front with some messily applied olivey, browny, yellowy brush strokes. I finished it off with the turquoise cross in the middle, and that's basically it. And now we can finally move on to the installation and styling and get this space finished up. So today was supposed to be install day, but I've run into an issue, which is that it is incredibly dark and stormy outside. So if you can hear the wind howling in the background, I apologise. Sadly, there is not much I can do about that. The lighting up here is okay because I have some nice big windows in this room, and I've also got plenty of space to plug in my ring light, but it's really not ideal for filming downstairs because it's so cramped down there and it's just generally gloomy as hell. And I really want some nice natural light to film the reveal shots. So I've checked the weather forecast and apparently we're supposed to be getting some sunshine tomorrow morning. So I have postponed the install and instead today I'm going to be doing a little bit of off-camera prep, and I also wanted to film a haul of sorts of all of the things that are going to be going in this hallway so I can talk you through them before I put them in place. So I've gathered them together and they are currently surrounding me. It's nice to see it all in one place finally, and I'm really happy to see cohesion in the colour story and to see the general indoors meets outdoors theme really coming through. Obviously we've got the projects that I worked on in this video, my little glove doorstop here, bluebell light switch cover, butterfly wall hanging, and of course my cross painting. Obviously the ceiling flowers that I made are already stuck to the ceiling downstairs, and I am really happy to report that none of those have fallen down. I'm sitting on the eBay runner rug that that I bought, and next to my little green coat hooks, both of which I showed you earlier on in this video, so I'm not going to waste more of your time talking about those. Now onto the things that you have not yet seen. First up is this lampshade, which is an Art Deco glass shade in this beautiful mottled minty green colour. I have been coveting a shade like this for so long. Whenever I see them in the shops, they are really expensive, so I absolutely leapt at the chance to buy this when I found it in the charity shop for £5. It's in pretty good condition, there aren't any breaks to it, though the metal at the top is a bit tarnished and the whole thing is a little bit grubby. So one of the things I will be doing off camera today is giving this a good clean. Another ceiling accessory is this stunning stained glass floral hanging, which will be going on the hook at the centre of the ceiling. I did show this in a thrift haul video a while back, and I bought this especially for this space, and it only cost me £2, which is an absolute bargain. Very excited to see this in place. Then we have this plant pot, which is a vintage West German ceramic pot in this nice deep red colour, which I thought would tie in well with my front door. I bought 2 of these matching pots from a charity shop in Wales when I was on holiday there a couple of years ago, and I think I paid £10 for the pair. I just potted a cutting from one of my devil's ivy plants into this today, so only time will tell whether it takes or whether it dies a death. I'm not very green fingered generally, but I do find that devil's ivy are one of the hardier, more difficult to kill plants, which is why you will see lots of them dotted around my flat. And I thought in an outdoorsy themed hallway we needed at least one real plant down there, so that's that guy. And the final non-wall art object is one of my prized possessions, and that is my park bin, which you will have seen before if you've watched either of my flat tour videos. And this is a bin that was manufactured by my family back in the day, don't ask me when. And back when I was at uni doing my final degree show project around the theme of bins, I managed to convince the council to dig it up and give it to me for the generous price of £70. And this has been floating around my flat in various places for the last 5 years, but I really think that the only correct place for it is pride of place in my entryway. Someone did comment on one of my flat tours that I should use this bin as an umbrella stand, and I actually think that that is a really good idea, though the only problem with that is that I don't own an umbrella, thus an umbrella stand is not useful for me. So instead I'm going to be using this as it is intended, as a bin, specifically a bin for cat litter, because I don't have a wheelie bin where I live, so I can only put my rubbish out on the morning of my bin day. So when I change Sunday's litter tray, I obviously put everything into a black bag, and I usually just chuck that bag downstairs into the hallway and it sits there for like half a week looking really ugly. So instead I'm now going to be putting those black bags into this bin, which I'm sure you will agree is preferable. Finally onto wall art, and let's start with this abstract oil painting, which I bought from a charity shop for £5. I love this piece. The colours and the impasto paint application. You can tell from the canvas that this is really quite old, though sadly there isn't a date on it. It is signed on the back, but it's a bit hard to make out what it says. R. Hoff maybe, or just a giant letter B. I'm not sure, but it's really nice and I think it's going to look beautiful down in the hallway. Then speaking of beautiful, take a look at this absolutely stunning piece, which was £25 again from the charity shop, which is a little bit pricey but well worth it for this in my opinion, considering the size and the quality. It looks to be a watercolour and I just love how dreamy and ethereal it is. The framing on it is really nice too. I just got this one recently, so I am particularly excited about it. Then a much smaller piece, which again fits in with the blues and greens that we're seeing a lot of in this hallway. And this one is very special because it was painted by my great granny, who was a very keen and prolific amateur painter and who I am named after. My mum actually gave this to me only last week when I went home to visit, and I couldn't believe how perfect it was for this hallway, both the painting itself and also the wooden framing, which goes perfectly with my panelled wall. So thank you to my great granny for this lovely gift. And finally we have this painting, which long-time viewers of my channel may recognise because I made a whole video about the process of me painting this earlier this year when I was incredibly depressed. And I'm really excited for this to finally be put downstairs because I did paint this especially for this space, and it's just just been sitting on the floor in my living room for the last 11 months waiting to be put down there, and now it only has one more day to wait. And wow, I have been talking for way longer than I anticipated, so I think that we don't need any more blabbering from me. So let's skip to tomorrow with some good weather, cue the montage music, and we can finally get all of this stuff put up downstairs. If you've made it all the way to the end of this video, well done. I know that it's been a little bit of a marathon, and I feel like every individual element of this makeover took me an ungodly length of time to put together. But all in all, now seeing everything in situ, I can say that I am so pleased with how this hallway has come out. I do know that it's a little bit chaotic and higgledy-piggledy and all over the place, but to be honest, that's probably just a good representation of the rest of my home and also the person who lives here. So it's fitting, and it really feels like the hallway that I'm supposed to have. One thing I'm sure you will have noticed is that I did not end up purchasing a mirror for this space, and that is because after pricing up the cost of getting one bespoke cut, I just decided I didn't want to spend that amount of money, and I figured I could probably thrift one about the right size instead. So I have been diligently checking the charity shops for that mirror, and as of yet it just hasn't come up, as is the way with thrifting. It's all about patience. So in the future, hopefully there will be a mirror in this space. It's just not there yet. Another thing to note, if you watched the first part of this makeover, I mentioned that I was considering getting a vinyl decal stained glass panel for that window above the door. And again, I did quite a lot of research on that before deciding against, for a variety of reasons. First of which was that they were also pretty expensive. Second of which being, when you put in the dimensions of your actual window, it seemed that most of the companies would just warp and stretch the designs to fit that space rather than cutting like a bigger size panel or having it a little bit more bespoke, and I just thought that that would look really shoddy. And also I was thinking, there is already quite a lot going on down here. Does it really need more colour up in that window? It's actually quite nice having fresh, unaltered light coming through. So I'm happy with my decision not to do that. I am still considering maybe getting some vinyl decal lettering and numbering to put my house and flat number up on that window for postman's sake, but if I do that, I will not be putting it on the internet, obviously, for safety reasons. And then one last thing to mention that I did for this makeover but that I didn't film was that I painted that black arrow on the side of my meter box cupboard, which was in my original drawings, but I just didn't film it because I thought it was somewhat uninteresting. And the reason I wanted to do that was a little shout out to The Sims 4, which is one of the few games that I actually enjoy playing, and when I do play it I always just cover all the walls in those stick-on arrows that you can get in the game. So I figured I'd add one into my own home, and I also thought that it would draw the eye up to all the nonsense that we've got going on the ceiling down here. And that's all the notes that I made for things I needed to say in this outro. So all that's left to say is thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all the support that I'm getting on my videos. If you're new here, please do consider subscribing, leaving me a like or a comment, and I will see you again in the future for some more silly creative videos. Bye bye!